Okay, so now we're going to look at filter, which is another high order array method. For each is usually the first one you learn. Now, the difference between for each and a lot of these other ones we're going to look at, like filter and map, is that filter, along with a bunch of other high order array methods, actually return something. In most cases, they're going to return an array or a modified array. So if we look at this example on MDN, you can see we have some words in an array, and then we have this variable result set to words.filter. So this is something that you're going to do because this returns something, right? For each does not. So you're typically not going to see a variable equal to something dot for each. You just run that for each, and then you do whatever you want in the function. In this case, what's going to happen is we pass in a function. Okay, this is a function. I know it looks a little weird because there's no parentheses around this, but remember, with arrow functions, you don't need to have parentheses if it's just one parameter. So what we're saying here is we're looping through, we can get each word, and then we're testing that word and seeing if the length is greater than 6. Okay, now this is going to return, this line right here, is an array with only the words that pass this test, or only the elements in the array that pass this test. So the result will be these words right here because they're greater than 6. If they're not, then they're not going to be put into that array. So we're filtering out the words that don't pass this test. Okay, so let's try this on our own so that it's more clear. So we'll say const numbers, and I'm going to set this to, let's just do 1 through 10, 9 and 10. And then let's say I want to filter out, and I only want filter out all the odd numbers. So I just want the even numbers. Now I'm going to create a variable because it's going to return something. So we'll say, let's say even numbers, and we're going to set it to the numbers array dot filter. And again, this will take in a function. I'll just do a long form for now. So we can say function and pass in here whatever variable we want to use for each individual element or number. So I'll just say number in this case. You could use item or whatever. Now what we want to do here is return from this function some kind of condition. Now if I want to get the even numbers, I can do this. I can say if the number and then modulus operator, and then 2, if that is equal to 0. So if it's divisible by 2, then obviously it's even, right? If we have 0 remainder, then it's divisible by 2. So this is going to loop through, run this test on each of these, and whichever ones pass will be put into a new array in this variable. So let's go ahead and console log here, even numbers. And if we take a look in our console, you can see we get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. If I add on to this 11 and 12, then 12 should be added. Now this is kind of the long way of doing this. The shorter way, let's say short version, and then I'm just going to comment this out. So the short version would be to do even numbers equals numbers dot filter. And then we could pass in here just number, use an arrow, and then we just want the condition, which is if the number modulus 2 equals 0. Save that, we get the same thing. Okay, now if you wanted to do this with a for each, let's say same with for each. It'd be a little more complicated, right? If you want to pause the video and try it, you can, but let's take numbers, right, and then do a for each. So we're not going to set like anything equal to this. This is just to loop through. So what we can do is initialize a variable here. We'll just say let even numbers, and then we can loop through here and say number. And then we're going to have to do an if statement here if we want to test, right? So we'll say if the number modulus 2 equals 0, then we're going to take the even numbers variable, which is you know, we want to set this to an empty array. So you can see how much more complicated this is. Then we would have to push onto it the number if it was even. right? So now if I save, and we'll get the same result. So this right here, this one line is the same, giving us the same as this right here. All right, and we could use const here since we're just pushing on, we're not reassigning anything. Yeah, so that's filter. Now I want to do this with an array that's slightly more complicated with some other conditions other than just testing for an even number. So let's comment this out. And then what I'm going to do is grab the array. So we're just going to use an array of company objects, right? So each company has a name, a category, a start date, and an end date. So if you want, you can look at this as a challenge and pause the video and try to do this. They're all just using filter. But the first thing I want to do is get only retail companies. Okay, so I just want companies where the category is equal to retail. So if you want to pause the video and try that, go ahead and do it now. But what we'll do is create a variable, let's say retail companies. And you can imagine how useful this is. You know, if you think about a UI where you're filtering things, this comes in handy. So let's say companies. Okay, we want the companies array and we want to filter. And then we're going to use a short form arrow function. So let's say company. So for each company, we want to test if the company dot category, because it's an object, so we want to access the category and say if that is equal to the string of retail. All right, so now if we console log retail companies, we should get three values. And let's take a look here. So we have company 2, company 4, and company 9. All right, so if we look here, company 2 is retail, company 4 is retail, and company 9 is retail. So let's do another one. Let's say we want to get the companies that started in or after 1980 and ended in or before 2005. Okay, so get companies that started in or after 1980 and ended in or before 2005. Okay, if you want to try it, you can do that. I'm going to create a variable. We'll just call it early companies. Why did I put a space there? Early companies, and we're going to set that to, again, companies dot filter, and we should probably comment this console log out. All right, so companies filter, and in here we're going to have a function, pass in our variable of company, that's our item, and then we want to test to see if the company dot start is greater than or equal to 1980, right? And then, is that a string? No, it's not a string. And, okay, so we want to use the double ampersand. The company dot end is less than or equal to 2005. So that should do it. So let's console log early companies and save, and we get 3. So if we look at these, it's company 1, 7, and 9. So company 1 was 1981 to 2004. Company 7 was 86 to 96. And company 9 was 89 to, what was it? I'm sorry, 81 to 89. So those were all in the realm of 1980 to 2005. These other ones, like this was to 2008, this one was 2007, 2010. So it filtered out by this condition right here, this truth test. And then the last one we're going to do is to get companies that lasted, let's say, lasted 10 years or more. So to do that, we'll say const, and I'll just say long companies, and set that to companies dot filter. And we want our function here, and it's going to say company, and then the truth test we want is if the company dot end minus the company dot start is greater than or equal to 10. That means that it lasted 10 years or more. So let's console log long companies, and let's comment this log out. And you can see we get 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, this should be minus. Okay, so we get 5. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. So if we look at like 3, that only lasted, what, 99 to 2007, so that's not quite 10 years. What else? 4, 5 didn't last 10 years, 2009 to 2014. So yeah. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how filter works. This is very useful, and you'll use it all the time in your interfaces. You know, when you have a search box and you're filtering down by whatever it is, location or anything like that, this is going to come in handy. All right, now in the next video, we're going to look at map, which allows us to basically return an array just like filter, but we can modify anything we want and return an array of anything we want.